This is a story about what happens when emotional intimacy grows in the shadows, when authority collides with desire, and when the ones you trust the most look at you like you've become something else. Welcome to Stoic Psyche Wisdom. Today's story is not about chaos. It's about control and how quickly we can lose it in the quietest of rooms. Let's begin. The house was quiet that morning, more quiet than usual. I stood in the kitchen barefoot, the tiles cool against my skin, stirring tea I wasn't really going to drink. Outside, the fog rolled in like a soft warning, nature's way of whispering, "Brace yourself." My father, Victor, had asked me to stay for the weekend. "Just for the visit," he said. "Old friends of mine from university days. You remember Elias, Donovan, and Samuel, don't you?" I remembered. All too well. As a child, they were almost like uncles, figures who drifted in and out of my life, in blazers and leather shoes, bringing books, stories, and sharp, watchful eyes. Back then, I was just the daughter, quiet, observant, a ghost in the background of their laughter. But I'm not a ghost anymore. The sound of gravel crunching under tires pulled me from my thoughts. I walked to the window and saw their cars roll in, sleek, black, and slow, like a procession, like a funeral. Elias stepped out first, taller than I remembered, with the same silver hair and intense stare. He didn't smile. He nodded. Donovan followed, his signature smirk already playing on his lips. He always moved like he was in on a joke no one else knew. He gave a wink as he spotted me through the window. Then Samuel. He lingered by the car, scanning the horizon before finally walking toward the house. Always the quiet one, the one who watched, not spoke. My father greeted them at the door, arms out, full of warmth. I stayed in the kitchen, letting the walls between us keep me safe a little longer. But I could hear everything, their voices, their laughter, their stories resurrected like old spirits in the hall. That evening, I finally emerged. I wore a simple black, my hair pulled back. I looked at each of them, and for the first time, I felt them look back at me, not as a girl, but as a woman. Their glances lingered, briefly, politely. But I noticed, and I noticed that they noticed. And the game, though unnamed, had already begun. It was just past midnight when I found myself alone in the kitchen again. The rest of the house was still. I thought I was alone, until I turned and saw Elias standing in the doorway. No sound, just presence. "I couldn't sleep," I said, too quickly, as if I needed to explain myself. "Neither could I," he replied, stepping in. He poured himself a glass of water, moved slowly, deliberately, like a man who knew how to fill space without saying a word. "You still read those old Greek texts?" he asked. I smiled. "Only the ones you left behind." He looked at me then, really looked. "And what have they taught you?" I held his gaze. That control is often just the illusion we tell ourselves to keep from unraveling. He tilted his head slightly. "Your mother used to say things like that?" I paused. He had never spoken about her before. Not to me. "You move like her," he added. That sentence, that pause, that space between words that held meaning too heavy to carry. He left the glass on the counter and stepped closer, not touching, just existing near me. And that nearness burned. We stood there in silence, like two people on opposite ends of a tightrope, both knowing that a single breath could break the balance. Then he walked away. No words, no gestures. But I didn't sleep that night either. The next day unfolded like a carefully arranged scene. Meals prepared with precision, polite conversation over wine, chess games between old friends. Yet beneath the surface, something subtle had shifted. I became hyper-aware of their glances. Not lecherous, not overt, but observational, measured. Like I was being studied, weighed, interpreted through lenses I didn't fully understand. Donovan was the most charismatic. At dinner, he leaned in too close while complimenting the roasted lamb. His voice dipped just low enough that no one else could hear. "You've grown into something unforgettable," he said, then raised his glass and turned the compliment into a toast. My father chuckled, oblivious, perhaps choosing to be. Samuel rarely spoke, but he observed constantly. I caught him once in the hallway, standing near the bookshelves, flipping through one of my journals. He wasn't reading, just holding it, as if sensing the thoughts embedded in the paper. "You write about people," he said, without looking at me. "But do you ever write about yourself?" "Isn't that the same thing?" I replied. He looked up. "Only if you're willing to be honest." That night, I sat by the fireplace alone while the others retired. Elias passed through briefly on his way to bed. He didn't speak, but he paused just long enough to let me feel it, that strange tension that only grows when nothing is said at all. And still, I said nothing, because part of me was afraid, but another part was curious, not about them, about me, about who I was becoming in their presence. On the third day, the power play began, subtle at first. Elias asked for my help carrying firewood from the shed, a simple request, but when we reached the edge of the woods, he stopped. "Do you trust them?" he asked. I turned. "My father?" He shook his head. "The others. I trust that they are who they say they are." "That's not the same as trusting who they really are." I didn't respond, because I didn't know the answer. Inside, Donovan and Samuel were setting up a board game, an old strategy game I remembered from childhood. They insisted I play. "You're not a child anymore," Donovan said. "Time to play like one of us." It was a test. They took turns making moves that forced me to adapt. One move from Donovan forced me into a defensive corner. Samuel, quiet and detached, sacrificed one of his own pieces just to limit my options. Elias never made aggressive moves, but every piece he placed shifted the balance. And me? I learned. By the third round, I wasn't just reacting. I was predicting. "You've changed," Samuel finally said. "You used to be predictable." "I used to be polite," I replied. Donovan leaned back, hands behind his head. "Then let's raise the stakes." They asked personal questions, veiled as part of the game. What would you do if someone tested your loyalty? Have you ever hidden your intentions? Would you betray someone if it meant finding the truth? It was theater, elegant, dangerous, a mental chess match with no board and no real rules. But I wasn't losing, not yet. That night, everything cracked. My father had gone to bed early, too much wine, or maybe something heavier. I stayed downstairs, the fire still flickering low. One by one, they returned to the living room. Elias, then Donovan. Finally, Samuel. No one spoke. Elias poured 3 glasses of scotch. He didn't offer me one, not out of disregard, but to draw a line, or maybe to erase one. Donovan sat closest to me. He spoke first. "You feel it, don't you?" I didn't ask what. I knew. "This undercurrent," he continued. "This game we've all been playing since the moment we arrived. It's not about attraction, or even about power. It's about control, about watching you not give in." Samuel spoke next quietly. "But you've already given something, the moment you allowed it to continue." I turned to Elias. He hadn't spoken. but he looked at me with something between sadness and admiration. "You didn't invite us here," he said, "but you didn't stop us from staying." The room was so still it hurt, and in that stillness, I saw it all. They weren't seducing me, they were studying me, testing the limits of my restraint, my will, my self-identity. They had done it to others, perhaps, maybe even to each other. This wasn't about desire, it was about influence, about what happens when minds collide in close quarters, with nothing to distract them but themselves. "I let you into my home," I finally said, my voice steady, "but I never gave you permission to rearrange the furniture." Donovan smiled. Elias stood. Samuel nodded, almost respectfully. And just like that, they left the room. The next morning, the house felt lighter. They packed their things, offered polite goodbyes. My father was still oblivious, or perhaps he wasn't. Perhaps he chose peace over acknowledgement. As Elias shook my hand, he held it a moment too long. "You passed," he said. I tilted my head. "Was that the point?" "No," he replied. "The point was to see if you would realize there was a test at all." And then they were gone. Days passed, then weeks. But I wasn't the same. I found myself more measured, sharper, less interested in the superficial. I read differently. I walked into rooms differently. Not arrogantly, but with awareness. I realized something fundamental. You don't lose your power when others try to take it. You lose it when you forget you ever had it. What those men tried to do wasn't evil. It wasn't even malicious. It was a reflection of how the world works. Power tests power. Minds test minds. And those with no center get pulled into someone else's orbit. I wasn't pulled. I stayed grounded. Because sometimes the strongest boundary is the one that never had to be spoken. What does it mean to allow someone in? Sometimes the greatest test of character isn't what you do. It's what you resist doing. Sometimes the battle isn't loud. It's quiet. It's made of glances, silences, and subtle games of influence. The true self is revealed not through indulgence, but through restraint. And restraint is not weakness. It is power, refined. So the next time someone steps into your space, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, remember, you don't have to shout to hold your ground.